My mother forged my 14-year-old son's signature on a $156,000 business loan without telling me. She wanted to start a restaurant and needed a cosigner with a clean credit record. When the bank called our house, I didn't scream. I stayed calm, pulled up the documents, and drove straight to the bank manager's office. I placed the original loan agreement next to my son's actual signature from his school permission slip. The manager's eyes widened. I said my son is still in 8th grade, and the signature, my mother fainted. But that moment, that one moment when she hit the floor, didn't come from nowhere. It was the culmination of 16 years of being invisible in my own family, 16 years of being underestimated by people who thought they knew exactly who I was and what I could never become. To understand how we got here, you need to know what came before. You need to understand the architecture of dismissal that I'd been building my response to, piece by piece, since I was 29 years old. Let me tell you how we got here. I was working as a junior account coordinator at Hartley Marketing Associates, making $47,000 a year, when my mother first told me I didn't have the temperament for business. We were sitting in her kitchen in the house I'd grown up in, the one she and my father still owned on Maple Ridge Drive in Portland. She was making her signature pasta carbonara, the one she always made when she wanted to deliver bad news gently. My father had just passed away that January, almost 2 years prior, and she was starting to make decisions about the restaurant business. She'd always wanted to open a place. My father had always said no. Now he was gone, and suddenly her dreams were rushing forward like water finding a crack. "You're just not built for it, sweetheart," she said, not unkindly. She was never unkind. That was the problem. Unkindness would have been easier to argue with. "You're sensitive, you care too much what people think. Business requires a certain hardness." I was 29 years old. I'd just been promoted to account coordinator. I'd managed 3 client accounts and brought in 2 new ones. But my mother had decided this about me apparently years earlier, and she was going to deliver this verdict with love and pasta. "Okay," I said. I stirred my wine instead of arguing. "What are you thinking then?" What she was thinking was that she'd approach my brother Marcus with the idea. Marcus worked in commercial real estate in Seattle. Marcus had always been confident in that way that made people listen. Marcus had a firm handshake and a way of speaking that made you believe he'd already won the negotiation before it started. Of course she was thinking of Marcus. Over the next 3 years, my mother spent $240,000 on restaurants. 2 restaurants, technically. The first one, Lucia's, opened in October of 2019 with Marcus as the managing partner. It closed by August of 2020 when the pandemic hit. The second one, Lucia's Redux, opened in June of 2022 in a different location with a different menu, and Marcus was still involved, though by then my mother had realized he spent more time in Seattle than in Portland. The second restaurant was struggling. She was putting in $8,000 a month just to keep it open. "I thought you didn't have the temperament for business," I said to Marcus one Thanksgiving. We were in my mother's kitchen again. Nothing ever changes in that kitchen. Same white subway tile, same copper pots hanging above the stove, same way the afternoon light comes through the windows at exactly 4:47 p.m. and makes everything look like a photograph of itself. "It's different when it's your money," he said. He meant it as a joke, I think, but it landed like a knife. My sister Jennifer was there too. She was between jobs. She worked in HR and had just left a position at a nonprofit in Bend, Oregon. She was living with our mother while she figured things out. She looked at me with this expression of exhausted sympathy when Marcus said that, like she was watching someone receive news they'd already been dreading. "You're right," I said. "I could never invest that kind of money in something so risky." Nobody disagreed. This was my life for 3 years. I watched my mother lose money on restaurants. I watched Marcus show up for board meetings. I watched my mother defer to him on decisions, even the ones that were actively destroying the business. And I watched everyone around me assume that this was the natural order. That Marcus had the temperament. That I did not. That money was something people like my mother and Marcus had, and people like me had. Jobs. Meanwhile, I was making moves they didn't see. In 2019, the same month Lucia's opened, I took a Series 7 exam and got my securities license. It took me 3 months of studying at night after work. I told my mother I was thinking about getting my MBA. She seemed relieved. MBA made sense to her. MBA was a legitimate path for people without the temperament for business. An MBA was credentialing. An MBA was a way to ask permission before entering a room. I didn't take the MBA. I took the Series 7. In 2020, I moved from Hartley Marketing into the wealth management division of Cascade Financial Group. My salary went to $68,000 a year. I didn't tell my family about the move until I'd been there for 2 months and the probationary period was over. When I mentioned it, my mother said, "Oh, that's nice. Are you happy?" Like I'd gotten a promotion in happiness rather than in position. My brother didn't ask about it at all. By 2021, I was bringing in $72,000 a year, and I'd started taking individual clients on the side. Not many, 3 initially. Real people with real money who wanted investment management. I didn't advertise, word of mouth. A woman I met at the gym whose brother managed a commercial contracting firm, an older gentleman who'd sold his tech startup, a couple from Vancouver who'd inherited property. Nothing that required a license beyond what I already had, nothing that interfered with my job, but something that was mine. I opened an LLC in March of 2021. Cascade Wealth Management, LLC. Just my name on the paperwork, just me. I rented a small office space on Burnside Street for $800 a month, 200 square feet, a window that looked out onto the street where I could watch people walking to coffee shops and work and their lives. I didn't tell my family, not because I was hiding it exactly. I just didn't mention it. The way you don't mention your lunch. It wasn't relevant to them. By 2022, my side practice had 5 clients. By the end of 2022, I had 12. By the middle of 2023, I had 23. I was making $140,000 a year from Cascade Financial, and I was making another $90,000 from my private clients. $230,000 total. I was 37 years old. I bought a condo in Lake Oswego that same year. $280,000. I paid cash. Well, not cash. I paid from the account I'd been building for 6 years, investing aggressively in index funds, living on $60,000 a year, and putting everything else away. The thing about being underestimated is that nobody watches what you do with your money. I had just closed on the Lake Oswego property when we all went to my mother's house for Thanksgiving in 2023. She was still pouring money into Lucia's Redux. Now it was $8,000 a month to break even, and some months it wasn't even breaking even. She'd invested another $90,000 that year. Marcus said the location was the problem. My mother was starting to wonder if maybe the concept was the problem. She was starting to wonder if maybe she'd made a mistake giving him so much control. "The market is just difficult right now," Marcus said. "The market for restaurants is always difficult," my mother said. It was the first time I'd heard doubt in her voice. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same one I'd sat at when she told me I didn't have the temperament for business. The afternoon light was starting to come through the window at that particular angle. 4 o'clock was approaching. "You'd never be able to afford a place in Lake Oswego," my mother said. She was making her famous marinara from scratch. She was stirring it slowly, thoughtfully. "The prices there are insane. $400,000 minimum." "Maybe you're right," I said. "I probably am," she said, and she smiled. She was right about so many things. She'd been right about me not having the temperament for business. She'd been right about Marcus being the one with real potential. She'd been right about so many things that she'd stopped really checking if she was right at all. I had closed on the Lake Oswego condo 8 months earlier, paid $280,000. It was in my name alone. It had a view of the water and a small guest house in the back that I was thinking about converting into office space. But I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. And when she made that confident statement about Lake Oswego being unaffordable, I just let her believe what she believed. Because I was building something now, and I had learned that the people who underestimate you are always the most surprised when they discover what you've actually done. By the end of 2023, my practice had grown to 41 clients. I was making $180,000 from Cascade Financial and $138,000 from my own practice. $318,000 a year. I'd hired a part-time office manager. I'd formalized the processes. I'd started a waiting list. I could have grown faster, but I was being strategic. I wanted longevity. I wanted to be sustainable. I wanted to build something real. My family had no idea. There had been close calls. In early 2023, my mother had asked me what I'd been doing with all my time. I was working 70-hour weeks, split between Cascade and my private practice. "I've been taking some additional certifications," I told her. This was technically true. I was doing continuing education. Just trying to stay current in my field. She'd nodded, satisfied. She thought I was being dutiful, careful. She didn't realize I was becoming something she'd already decided I could never be. In the summer of 2023, my father's estate had finally closed. It took longer than expected. There were complications. I inherited $53,000. Everyone did. My mother, my brother, my sister, and me. $53,000 each from the life insurance policy he'd left. My mother invested hers in Lucia's Redux. Marcus said he was investing his in some cryptocurrency opportunity he'd heard about through a friend. Jennifer paid off her car. I put mine in a high-yield savings account. I wasn't touching it. I was keeping it separate. I was keeping my options open. There had been another close call in the fall of 2023 when my brother had asked me directly what my job was paying. We were at a family dinner. My mother had made her carbonara. We were sitting in that kitchen, and the light was doing that thing where it makes everything look like a memory, even though it's happening right now. About $65,000, I said. This was the salary portion from Cascade. It wasn't a lie. It was just incomplete. The way most conversations in my family were incomplete. We operated in these channels of partial truth. My mother told us she was confident about restaurants when she was increasingly unsure. Marcus implied he had everything under control when he didn't. And I implied I was much less busy and much less successful than I actually was. Not bad, Marcus said. He was making $120,000 in real estate, though the market was starting to shift. He didn't know it yet. He wouldn't know it for another year. Not bad for what you do. It's fine, I said. It pays the bills. Which was true. My salary paid the bills. Everything else was building something else entirely. By the spring of 2024, I had 68 clients. My practice was now generating $214,000 a year. I was 38 years old. I'd been running this in secret for 3 years. I had a business license. I had an EIN number. I had an accountant. I had a lawyer who specialized in financial services. I had formalized everything because I'd wanted to be ready for something. I didn't know what, but I'd wanted to be ready. The waiting list was now 3 months long. People were referring people to me. There was a waiting list of people who wanted to give me money to manage. I had built something that had a gravitational pull. I had built something real. And then, in June of 2024, my mother called a family meeting. She announced it on a Sunday. She called all of us, asked us to come to the house on Saturday afternoon. My brother came in from Seattle. My sister came down from Bend. I came from my condo in Lake Oswego. We all arrived within an hour of each other and filed into my mother's living room like it was a board meeting, though nobody had said it was that serious. But we all knew, you can feel these things. You can feel when someone is about to shift the furniture in your life. She decided to give Lucia's Redux to Marcus, not to sell it, to give it, to transfer the deed and the business license and all of it into his name officially. She'd been thinking about it for months, she said. She was tired. She was losing money. She wanted to hand it off to someone with vision and business acumen, someone who could take it where it needed to go. She was standing in front of the fireplace when she said this. There was a photograph on the mantle of all of us from 15 years earlier. My father was still alive in that photograph. My mother looked younger. Marcus looked confident even then, though I wonder now if it was actual confidence or just the kind of confidence that comes from never being questioned. I'm so proud of you, Marcus, she said. I know you can turn this around. You have the instincts for it. Marcus accepted this the way he'd accepted everything from her. Gracefully, confidently, like she just handed him what he'd always deserved. My sister congratulated him. My mother beamed. The afternoon light was starting to come through the big windows in the living room. 4 o'clock was approaching. And something shifted in me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder than anger. Something more like clarity. I had spent 3 years building something real. I had $214,000 in annual revenue. I had 68 clients who trusted me with their money. I had a waiting list of people who wanted me. I had purchased a $280,000 property in cash. I had a business that didn't need my mother's approval to exist or my brother's confidence to legitimize it. And my mother was standing in her living room, handing my brother a money-losing restaurant like it was a birthright. Congratulations, Marcus, I said. My voice was very calm, very steady. I'm sure you'll find a way to lose another $200,000 on it. Everyone turned. My mother's smile faltered. Marcus's expression went blank. I mean, I continued, and I heard the sound of my own voice like I was hearing someone else speak, You've gotten very good at it. What's the timeline for Lucia's redux to close? 6 months? A year? That's not fair, Marcus said. He was defensive. I'd never heard him defensive before. Probably not, I agreed. Probably not fair at all. My mother stood there. She was looking at me like she was trying to figure out who I was. What's gotten into you? She said. I stood up. I had been sitting on the sectional, the big one that my mother had had reupholstered 2 years ago. I stood up and looked at her. I looked at my brother. I looked at my sister, who had her hand over her mouth. I'm going to tell you something, I said. And I want you to really listen to me. I own a business. I've owned it for 3 years. I didn't tell you because it never seemed relevant to you. You'd already decided what I was capable of. You'd decided it when I was 29 years old and made the mistake of listening to your assessment. But I stopped listening after a while. I started doing something else instead. My mother sat down, just sat down straight into the nearest chair. I have 68 clients, I said. I'm generating $214,000 a year in revenue. I own a $280,000 property in Lake Oswego, which I purchased outright with money I earned. I have a lawyer. I have an accountant. I have business insurance and a professional liability policy and everything else you need to run a real business. A successful business. A business that didn't require me to transfer it to me from someone else or have someone hand it to me. I built it. By myself. With my own capacity and my own instincts, which, as it turns out, are not actually terrible for business. The silence in that room was complete. It was the kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat. It was the kind of silence where everything before this moment becomes a different story. My mother was staring at me. Her face was pale. You're lying, Marcus said. It wasn't angry. It was confused. It was the tone of someone who had just realized that something they thought was stable wasn't. I'm not lying, I said. Would you like to see the business license? The EIN filing? The client contracts? I have all of it. I have everything. Because I built something real, and real things have documentation. I walked to where I'd left my bag. I pulled out a folder. It was tan, professional. I'd prepared it. Not for this moment specifically, but I'd prepared for a moment like this. I'd prepared for the moment when I would stop being invisible. I laid the folder on the coffee table. Business license. EIN documentation. 3 years of tax returns. A client list with accounts and performance metrics. Everything. My mother didn't look at it. She was looking at me, and her face was doing something I'd never seen before. She was trying to reconstruct everything she'd ever said to me in light of this new information. How long? She asked. Since 2021, I said. 3 years. Why didn't you tell us? My sister asked this. She sounded hurt, but also something else. Something like respect, maybe. Would you have listened? I asked her. I wasn't being cruel. I was asking a genuine question. Or would you have nodded and told me to be careful? Would you have suggested that maybe I was taking on too much? Would you have implied that I didn't have the temperament for it? Nobody answered, because they knew. They all knew that I was right. My mother stood up. She was moving toward the folder. She picked it up slowly, like it might detonate. She opened it. She looked at the business license. Her hands were shaking. This is impossible, she said. Why? I asked. Why is it impossible? Why is it possible for Marcus to take a money-losing restaurant and be great? Why is it possible for you to invest in restaurants and be pioneering? Why is it impossible for me to be competent? She didn't answer. She was looking at the tax returns now. She was seeing the numbers. She was seeing proof of what I'd built while she was telling me I couldn't build anything. Jesus, Marcus said. He had gone very quiet. 214,000. Last year, I said. The year before was 188,000. The year before that was 82,000. It's been growing. Because it's a real business run by someone who knows what she's doing. My mother sat back down. The folder dropped from her hands. She looked at me, and her face was the color of the walls. She looked like someone had just informed her that she'd been wrong about something fundamental. Mom, I said, and I kept my voice level, there's something else you need to know. I waited. I let the pause stretch. I let them all understand that this was a moment that mattered. About 2 months ago, someone from the bank called our house. They needed to speak to me about a loan application, a business loan application, for $156,000. Co-signed by my son. My sister made a sound, a small sound, like she was about to say something and then stopped herself. I have no idea how the bank got my son's signature, I continued. But the signature on the loan application doesn't match anything I have. It doesn't match his school permission slips. It doesn't match anything he's ever actually signed. But you already know this, don't you, Mom? She couldn't speak. She was staring at me, and her mouth was open slightly, and she couldn't make words come out. I went to the bank, I said. I showed them the difference. I showed them my son's actual signature. I explained that my son is 14 years old and cannot legally co-sign a business loan. I explained that forging a minor's signature is a crime. The bank's legal department became very interested in where this application came from. I was going to tell you, my mother said. Her voice was very small. I needed the loan. Lucia's Redux was hemorrhaging money and the bank wouldn't give me anything else. I needed someone with a clean credit record. And your son's credit is clean. He's 14. He has no record at all. I was going to explain it to you. I was going to pay it back before he ever found out. You forged my son's signature, I said. You committed fraud. You involved a minor in a financial crime. And you did it because you were desperate. And you were desperate because you made bad decisions with my brother's guidance. And my brother didn't know what he was doing. And you never asked anyone else for help, because you'd already decided what everyone was capable of. My mother's hands were shaking. She was breathing in a way that made me think about calling an ambulance, but I didn't move. I've already spoken to my lawyer, I said. I've already been to the bank. I've already informed them that any and all loan applications made in my son's name without his consent will be contested. I've already filed a police report. I've already done everything I need to do to protect my son. She made a sound. It was very small. She was clutching at the arm of the chair. And I'm telling you right now that you need to withdraw that application immediately and tell the bank the truth about how you obtained the signature. Because my lawyer is very interested in whether you actually think you can just commit fraud and have it all work out. My lawyer is very interested in documenting the full extent of what you've done. That's when she fainted, just slid out of the chair like someone had turned off gravity. My sister screamed. Marcus stood up. My mother hit the floor very quietly, her body loose and unresisting. I didn't move. I stood where I was. I waited for her to come to. It took about 40 seconds. She gasped and her eyes opened, and she stared at me for one long moment like she was seeing me for the very first time. What have I done? She said. It wasn't a question, it was a realization. You've done exactly what you told me I wasn't capable of doing, I said. You've failed at something, and you're going to have to live with that. The police came 3 days later. My lawyer had filed a formal complaint. The district attorney's office had decided that fraud was fraud, even when it involved family. My mother had to hire a criminal defense attorney. The meeting was closed. I wasn't part of it. I was just the victim's parent. Just the person my mother had tried to use as a stepping stone on her way to saving her restaurant. The charges were eventually reduced. My mother agreed to pay back the loan amount plus interest and penalties. She agreed to complete a restorative justice program. She agreed to 5 years of probation. She agreed to resign from any official capacity at Lucia's Redux. Lucia's Redux closed 3 months later. Marcus couldn't keep it running without my mother's capital and his unwillingness to actually run it himself. The restaurant business is not something you can manage from Seattle. The restaurant business requires presence and decision-making and the ability to respond in real time. My brother had none of those things. He just had my mother's money, and once that was gone, once it was all tied up in legal fees and restitution, there was nothing left. My mother didn't speak to me for 8 months. My brother sent me an email that was ostensibly an apology, but was actually a carefully worded explanation of how he'd never actually known she was struggling, as if ignorance was exculpatory, as if not paying attention was a legitimate defense. I didn't respond. My sister called and asked me if I thought I'd been too hard. I told her that you can't be too hard on someone who commits fraud. That's the minimum response to fraud. I'm still managing my clients. My practice has grown to 94 people now. I'm making $387,000 a year from my business alone, not counting my salary from Cascade Financial, which is now $198,000 after I moved up to Senior Director of Wealth Management. The waiting list is 6 months long. I'm thinking about hiring an associate. I'm thinking about expanding to a bigger office. I'm thinking about maybe opening a second location in Seattle, which would be funny, given the irony. My son is fine. He's in 10th grade now. He knows what his grandmother tried to do. He knows that I went to the bank. He knows that his signature is something valuable that shouldn't be given away freely. He's learned an important lesson about family, which is that being related to someone doesn't mean they get to use you. My mother's probation is almost over. She started going to therapy. She started volunteering at a nonprofit that helps small business owners avoid making financial mistakes. She started working at Target, which is humbling for someone who once called herself an entrepreneur. She makes $16 an hour. She's been there for 14 months. Marcus is still in Seattle. He got out of the real estate business. He's working in sales for a tech company, and he's making decent money, but his trajectory has flattened. He doesn't have the energy to climb anymore. He doesn't have the confidence. He's married, though I don't know much about his wife. We don't really talk anymore. Everything is quiet now. It's been almost 2 years since the faint, since the revelation, since everything shifted. It's been 2 years of new normal. Of me not going to my mother's house. Of my mother not calling as often. Of the family gradually accepting that the architecture of hierarchy has changed. That the person they all thought couldn't do anything has built something real. That the person they all deferred to turned out to be failing in his own quiet way. Then yesterday, my lawyer called. "Your mother has filed a motion," she said. "She's claiming the police report was made under duress. She's claiming you threatened her. She's claiming the whole thing was a setup." I didn't respond for a moment. I was thinking about something. "She's saying that you essentially extorted her confession," my lawyer continued. "She's claiming that if you hadn't confronted her so aggressively, she would never have agreed to the police report. She's claiming that the entire case is based on coercion." I walked to my safe. I opened it. I pulled out a memory card and looked at it. It was a very small card, very easy to hide, very easy to use. I'd been wearing a smartwatch that day. It records audio. I turned it on before the family meeting. I have everything, every word, every confession, every moment. "I'm going to send you the recording," I said to my lawyer. "What recording?" "The one from the day I told her what I'd found out about the forged signature," I said. "The one where she confesses to everything. The one where nobody is anywhere close to duress. The one where she volunteers all the details. I was waiting for this. I knew she'd try something like this. I was waiting for her to break again." I can hear my lawyer smiling over the phone. "That's going to be helpful," she said. I hung up the phone. I sat in my office in Lake Oswego, looking out at the water. The light was starting to shift the way it does in late afternoon, that particular golden quality that makes everything look like it's being photographed. I put the memory card back in the safe and closed it. My mother's going to lose again. She's going to lose because she didn't learn. She's going to lose because she still thinks that the rules she's applied to other people don't apply to her. She's going to lose because she underestimated me one more time, and by now, underestimating me is a reflex that's going to keep costing her. What do you think? Did I go too far, or was my mother getting exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments, and if you have a story about family betrayal, subscribe and share it. I'd love to hear what you did when the people closest to you tried to use you.